y'all ready for this? Tonight on the line, pre-recorded intro file not found. Y'all remember when this was professional and there was a nice intro here? I'm just saying. Ooh! Wow, 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 wow. Oh my God, my camera just moved itself. This is not the correct position of this camera. Where is the right position of this camera? Is it you? That's better, but also worse. Let's come back to there. Jimmy has to mess up something with technology every week. That is the rule. Now, I will say, quickly addressing a couple of things. First of all, let me introduce, as my camera still sucks. There we go. Oh, we're introducing negative space. I might even zoom out a little. My God. Let me introduce tonight's co-host with me. It's been a while that in the making. We were actually scheduled to host together, but then a tornado or something happened in the past, or whatever the reason was that Shannon covered. I think you actually were on vacation in Hawaii, but I was trying to give you a better out. You were like, no, that's not what happened. Joining me tonight is TikToker extraordinaire, Heathen Queen. How are you, Heathen Queen?
Hello. Just vibing.
Does the internet know
hurricanes where I live?
Does the internet know your name? I always forget.
Yes, they know my name is Jessica or Jess.
Okay. I'm mostly asking for my own sake. Can I just call you Jess, or am I calling you Heathen Queen all night long?
No, you can call me Jess, Jessica, Heathen Queen, HQ, you name it. Basically.
H Quizzy, H Quizzle. Yeah. I like
H $.
I quite like H Quizzy, actually. So let's talk about a couple of things. First of all, last week people may remember that we had Mr. Deity on. We're gonna have him on again at some point before too long, because last week's show had some technical disasters, and initially I blamed YouTube, but I wasn't positive if it was YouTube. I also was open to the idea that it was vMix. But what I wasn't open to was another option, that it was my fault, which it also wasn't. You thought I was going to admit fault. No, it turned out my internet service provider was having technical issues last Sunday, and the download speed had gone to 5 megabits per second, which caused some strange error because it's actually upload that matters the most, except for that we're connected to our co-host with this 1080p high data amount call. And so I had the co-host on, Mr. Deity, and having to download his signal was just making my streamer go wild. So I do want to apologize to YouTube. I'm sure that they know. I'm sure they're watching. Susan's a constant fan. She's always on here, so she's probably happy. For this thing, I was wrong to blame YouTube for our technical issues last week. It was not my own incompetence. It wasn't even YouTube, and it was kind of vMix, but it was mostly my internet service provider's fault. Moving on to that, because the live chat, there was several messages about this before we got started. I know there are going to be people who come in later and ask about it, so now we'll inform everyone in the live chat. We'll all know. Matt Dillahunty has not quit the line. People are very, very surprised today, as I think we all were, when Matt did the Atheist Experience earlier. He did inform people that that was his last episode of the Atheist Experience, or any ACA show in general. Now, I'm not going to be speaking about any of the reasons or anything, just assuring people who are, I guess, kind of worried that he was just leaving the internet and activism in general. You'll actually be able to catch him still this Wednesday on the Hang Up, and he will be back here at this same time next Sunday with myself co-hosting the Sunday show. It is always nice to have an opportunity to remind people the Line and the Atheist Community of Austin are two separate entities. They are not on the same network or anything. We are friends. I very much admire many of the people over there. We call each other when we have problems to troubleshoot. When I initially set up the Line, I called them and was like, hey, are there any hints or things you all can give me about tech? 'Cause I'm setting everything up. And they were extremely generous and gave me everything, basically. They were like, yeah, here's the diagrams of all of our tech, everything we do. Super, super generous. And then when they needed to switch to our model, which is people from different parts of the world hosting together, I return the favor. So we're still great friends and comrades and everything there. So that just to answer what I know is some people's question, whether or not Dillahunty will be also leaving sort of call-in shows in general. No, Matt will be back on this channel on Wednesday on his normal time, the hang up, and joining me next Sunday. So that answers that question for everybody who was surprised. Yeah, that's the deal. And someone has already said, shh, guys, don't let everyone know. Don't let Jimmy know that we're all here for Jess. I have no doubt. I already knew that. I was already aware. This is why I'm sort of getting my announcements and things in now. And then the show will go on and everyone will drown me out.
Listen,
as I think.
He wore a jacket for you guys.
I mean, I wore a jacket for myself because it changes the lines of the shirt I'm wearing underneath. It's just much more flattering. But thank you
not
for
wearing
noticing.
a shirt underneath? Probably.
No. Ow. Why are you so mean? You're just a mean person.
No.
We have lines open, by the way. We do want to talk to you about God and stuff, clearly, but that stuff being any sort of religious belief, supernatural belief. We do tend to keep at least 2 lines open for theists. And so we will take a couple of atheist calls for sure throughout the night. If you're an atheist and you want some advice on deconverting or something, we prioritize theist callers because that's who we most want to chat with, if I'm being honest. But if you have a topic that is important to you and it might be important to other people as well, that is also acceptable. Jess, why don't you take a moment to just further, go ahead and further introduce yourself, tell people where to find you, and I'll start getting some of the call stuff queued up for us.
Yeah, so my go-to is that you can always find me in hell. But really where you can find me is anywhere on the internet. So YouTube, TikTok, I'm Queen of the Heathens. Although I've been on there less because they're annoying. So TikTok, if you're watching this, shape up. I've been on YouTube a lot more recently. I'm also on Twitter if you're spicy, if you can hang, because I use Twitter to take out my aggression. And I'm Queen of Heathens over there too. That's pretty much where you can find me. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
I might even tell the text list that we're out there. But yeah, we still have some lines open. We do have a call ready to go here that we will take in a moment. I'm just doing the sort of last minute unprofessional stuff of damn, Jimmy, you have all the time of an entire day to get a show ready and you're still doing things last minute. I know. I promise you there's no insult or compliment you can give me greater than the insults and compliments that I give myself. It's
true. You should have heard him before the show.
Just absolutely shitting on and then celebrating myself. I believe I did refer to myself as a tech god, but that's true.
He was like, "Do I look good today?"
Okay,
and then he was
first
like, "Wait,
of all,
I have coffee tea.
That is not
go.
the way. That is not the way I said it. I went, "Oh, do I
Prove
look
it.
good today?" I was surprised to go I almost look camera ready. And if you've seen me on some live streams recently, I'll show up in a full on hoodie with oatmeal, which doesn't look like oatmeal, just spilled down the front of it. And I'm just sitting back with the things in my hood. I'm like, "Oh, let's get a fucking caller." Who's calling? Very disrespectful to my co-host.
Just
indeed.
Eating oatmeal out of your hood.
I don't know if you know what dried email on a shirt looks like, but it's.
I know. I can imagine.
I don't think anybody actually thinks it's oatmeal. What I'm getting at. Live on the line right now. All right. Anyway, that was fun. Banter achieved. Let's get on to the first call. We did it. We bantered. And we're going to talk to Adam in California, who is a theist and wants to discuss own beliefs and host beliefs. Which is sort of interesting. We're gonna flip, I guess, the script here. Adam, are you there? First of all, do you hear us? Hello.
I am. I am. I can hear you.
Excellent. Now, are you the Adam?
Might be Adam. As in the first man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I wouldn't know because I don't remember being born. So I guess I wouldn't know.
Yeah, could be. Do you remember having a rib removed to have a companion crafted for you, though, is the question.
Any talking snakes in your past?
Indeed.
No, I can't say. Even though I'm in California, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, but no, not as of yet.
Have you ever blamed all the evil in the entire world on women in general?
To be clear, I guess they kind of blamed each other. That's true. Yeah. No, I have not. I personally have not. No.
Okay. Well, then let's talk about what you actually called in to talk about, because I am interested to hear about your own beliefs. When it says you're a theist, do you want to let us know what sort of theist you are?
Yeah, sure. I'm a Christian.
Okay, great. And so which of your beliefs did you want to discuss with us, or do you want us to take you on a Socratic ride? It's up to you. I can, I guess, introduce my own beliefs if that's the way you'd like to do it. Yeah, without proselytizing, so, just give us the cliff notes.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I'll try and keep it short. I've been a believer in Christ for a large majority of my life. But I would say that in my young adulthood is when I started to take it a lot more seriously. I would say that as I've continued to get older, I've kind of divided my belief, or at least let's say the reasoning for my belief, into four distinct kind of categories, which would be the personal, the spiritual, the philosophical, and the scientific. And so, I don't have to go into a rabbit hole into any of those right now, but if you would like to, absolutely can. But
yeah, if we do go into those, it'll be categories 3, maybe, because I genuinely don't give many shits about the philosophical, though sometimes you have to. So it'd probably be like, we might dabble in 3, but we'd spend our time in 4. And what it sounds like you're proposing is scientific evidence. As far as the personal, there's no reason for us to go down the personal, right? I can't believe because of a personal experience you had, right? Yeah.
Of course.
As far as the spiritual, we'd have to first come to a conclusion that there even is such thing as a spiritual, which we could focus entirely on. I just don't think we would have time for the scientific or the philosophical. So if you want to jump in, I would first just go straight to your reasons for believing, which are scientific. That is to say, something borne out by the scientific method. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so I guess to preface, first of all, I wouldn't say that all of them can just be taken on their own. Again, I'll obviously talk about the scientific, but I am, hurt to hear that you don't want to go into the philosophical. Maybe we can later, but the philosophical is my favorite.
Yeah,
but I'll go into the scientific.
Here's the reason, Adam. If we want to go through the philosophical, here are the couple of options that it seems like people ever bring to me when they say philosophical. We can discuss solipsism, which if you and I were smoking weed together would be a fun time. But at the end of the day, we wouldn't agree categorically. As far as whether or not we are the only entities in the universe or we aren't, it doesn't matter because at the moment we can only deal with what we're presented with. We could go down word games like the teleological argument, but we're not going to agree on the fundamentals there, right? We can do the cosmological argument. We're not going to agree on some fundamentals theirs as well. We can do these different ones that are sort of categorized under the others where people go, well, cause and effect, and we're not going to agree on the fundamentals there. But
look at the trees, though.
Sure. Look at the trees. We have the option of very shallow philosophical arguments. So I'd rather skip all of those and go, you have a belief in a God, which you believe there is externally good reasons for everyone to hold. I assume that your same belief in a God. And I want to know what those reasons are, because if you're right about that God and the Christian God existing, I want to know that. My only motivation is to believe as many true things as possible. But as a result, I also have a method that I employ that helps me eliminate things which are untrue or not evidently true.
Okay.
And that's what you're going to be up against.
Sure. Okay, cool. Very cool. So yeah, let's get into it. And just one more segue. In terms of the philosophical, I actually would love a more simplistic. We don't have to go into all of those things. But for scientific, the first thing I'll say is that it is impossible to both prove or disprove God scientifically. And that, so to say that, I can prove that God exists through scientific method, I cannot. There's no way to do that.
So is this going to be a waste of time then, Adam? Can you give me good reasons for me to believe outside of scientific reasons?
Yeah. I'll go with these scientific reasons if you allow me, for sure. No. So in terms of the scientific reasons that I believe do point to Christ, or let's even go a bit further back to point to God. There are quite a few. When you look at the archaeology in terms of the historical evidence that obviously is part science, not fully, but is part of science, you see a lot of things that have been discovered that point towards the validity of the Bible. And the validity of the Bible is actually a very important topic when it comes to the scientific method of understanding Christianity, because the Bible is not just a religious text; it's a historical text. And most historians, the vast majority of historians, believe it to be historically accurate. Not necessarily that it's
So
let's stop there because they don't.
Hey, Adam, we got to go claim by claim here, buddy.
Sure.
The overwhelming majority of historians do not believe that the Bible is historically accurate, especially if we're going to say the entirety of the Bible. You can say that a lot of historians believe there are historical records or there are historical references within the Bible. That in and of itself, I think you would agree, isn't altogether impressive. Of course, if I was writing a book of fiction, I could set a book of fiction in the real world. It's called historical fiction, and I could have references to other things. So even if it's the people who are live that day writing it, and you are trying to sell a religion from which you have the authority to look around and say the people existed that did exist, or that the events that happened that did happen at the same time as your thing, isn't wholly impressive. Now, I don't know whether or not your assertion of its accuracy is to include that, for example, Noah historically is agreed to have existed, because he is not. In fact, really, it's starting at about King David, King Solomon eras that we say this is when the historical characters sometimes exist in real life.
Right. And all we have for King David is like one very small, very, very small archaeological reference. And it doesn't indicate that he did any of the things that are attributed to him in the Hebrew Bible. And actually, if you talk to most Hebrew Bible scholars, especially ones that aren't evangelical Christians or Catholic or whatever you want to say there, they'll say that David was likely an amalgamation of many Israelite kings.
Yeah. Yeah, all the things attributed to him, indeed.
Okay, so when I say that historians believe that the Bible is historically accurate, what I mean by that isn't specifically that they believe that David did all those things, but specifically that they believe Jesus did all these things, so on and so forth. What I mean is that the things that were written at the exact time that they are said to have been written.
No.
So
they don't agree with that either. Like, full stop, they don't.
So they do. Yeah. They do. That's the thing.
No. Like, I will give you 10 scholars off the top of my head that don't. I do this all fucking day long. Sorry, excuse my language. Like, this is what I do. I talk to scholars for a living. They don't.
So again, I've done the research as well, and I think any listener can do their own research. But the majority of historians believe that, again, not all of the Bible, but a lot. Okay.
Hey, let's just do this. Let's just do this for the sake of moving forward, Adam. I also disagree with you. I'm on the same position of Jess. Let's say that every event in the Bible, starting at David, because obviously I'm not going to concede to you Noah and the flood. I'm not going to concede to you Adam, the first man. I'm not going to concede to you Moses. So let's just start at David. And let's say every event in the Bible, perhaps not the details, but the events, I'll even give you the existence of Jesus Christ, really happened when they said it happened. In what way?
Wait. But wait, just a second. Are you saying that most historians do not believe in the existence of Jesus Christ?
No. I'm saying I don't buy I don't necessarily buy the existence of Jesus Christ as a historical figure. However, I would put myself as wait a second. I'd put myself as agnostic about it. I'm much more open to the idea that this sort of special Joshua may have existed and things are being attributed to him. The great philosophies that he's meant to have shared almost certainly wouldn't have come from him. But there might be a real human someone had in mind when they started writing these stories of Jesus, again, decades after the individual was meant to have died, starting decades after. I'm open to that idea. However,
hundreds of witnesses, though.
No, there isn't. There's not a single eyewitness of Jesus Christ who lived at the time of Jesus and claims to have seen it, who wrote it down. There are people who have written down on behalf of witnesses.
What about John, dude?
The Gospels were written decades after Jesus' life, anonymously, in advanced Greek, not Aramaic, which his poor-ass disciples would have written in, right? Like, I used to believe these were eyewitness accounts, and then I started reading scholarship. His disciples would have been mostly illiterate, which you can tell by the way he finds them. They would have likely only spoken Aramaic, let alone being able to write it. Probably not. The earliest copies that we have are from decades later in advanced Greek. So you're telling me that folks that followed Jesus around that likely weren't literate, learned advanced Greek, wrote it somewhere else. And here's the kicker: we don't have their names attached to them until the 2nd century.
Yeah. So in terms of your first claim, of course not. Of course not. They wouldn't have written in any Greek language. For instance, most scholars, both Christian and non-Christian, would ascertain that Paul's letters were not written by him, but were written by someone who followed him around and wrote for him. And the same can be said for those disciples.
No, it can't. Give me one shred of evidence that that's true, other than you said it.
Give you one shred of evidence that what is true, that someone can write for someone else?
No, that somebody followed Jesus around and then decades later wrote about it in Greek.
No. Okay, listen to what I'm saying. And okay, I'll say it another way. I'm not saying that someone followed Jesus around and wrote it in Greek. What I'm saying is that John, the apostle, followed Jesus around, and then someone followed John around after and translated it in Greek. That's what I'm saying. Because that's exactly what they did.
Show me any evidence.
Adam,
just give me a moment. Just give me a moment.
You are conceding, though, that not a single witness wrote it down themselves, right?
I can't. I was not there. But what I'm saying is that if John did not write it with his own hand,
John.
Even if John
let's just get to the next evidence, because you've lost this one real bad, bud. Okay. But you can disagree that you've lost this one. What's your next evidence besides? Well, you definitely did.
I also want to say that if you look at the Gospels, you can see that parts of Matthew and Luke are lifted directly from Mark verbatim. And so, like, why in the world, if we have all these individual accounts, are we having people write the exact same goddamn thing repeatedly, right? Like, why? And why was John so
do you mean like word
different
for word, or as in the event?
Yes, word for word. Word for word. There are sections where it just lifts it, picks it up, puts it down.
As you'll have to give me an example.
I'm curious whether or not you believe the literal accounts of the Old Testament happened also, or do you think the story of Moses is metaphorical? Because I'm genuinely, it's one of those things where it's like at this point, the historicity of the New Testament, you've already made some grandiose claims that simply aren't true. As far as the historicity of the Bible in general, I'm wondering how much, not just what you're claiming, like, hey, there's this little skeleton. I want to know what you literally think is historical in the Bible. So do you believe that the story of Moses is a literal story or a metaphor?
The story of Moses freeing the Israelites from Egypt and whatnot.
Existence.
And they popped into the Red Sea and parted it. They walked across, then they wandered in the desert for 40 years. Do you believe that's a literal story or a metaphor?
Absolutely, I believe that's literal. But I wouldn't say that I believe that based on any scientific evidence. Obviously, I believe that based on faith.
Entirely on faith. And so it's weird because when you presented yourself to us, it seemed like you're presenting yourself as, by the way, I'm a person who's been very thoughtful. I've been heavy in reach and all of this. And it's not just that the evidence points to that we don't have evidence.
Put words to my mouth, though.
The way you presented yourself, I don't think it's outrageous for me to have drawn that, to infer that. Because it seems like you're also it's not just that you have specific evidence that is wrong or you think supports your idea and it doesn't. It's that you're clearly avoiding. It's not just that the story of Moses probably didn't happen and we have no evidence. It's that we actually have a pretty good idea of what was going on back then. We also are certain there weren't Jews serving as slaves to ancient Egyptians. This is basically one of the first racist stories of like the light-skinned people were the good people and the dark-skinned people were the bad people. The story of Moses is frankly just not just that we don't have evidence, it's untrue. It's demonstrably untrue. It's weird because you don't usually want to take that burden.
What is the evidence for it being that
I'll tell you this.
I guess, untrue?
2 weeks ago, I did an entire panel on the Exodus with the chair of the Department of Middle Eastern Cultures and Languages from UCLA and the chair of Jewish Studies from Temple University, and Josh Bowen, who wrote the Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament, where he collects the consensus of scholarship around all of these issues. Egyptologists as a whole don't even acknowledge that the Exodus is even a potential thing. So there's an entire field of study about a place that this is supposed to have happened in, and none of them take it seriously. They don't even think about it, right? The director of Jewish Studies, who has written Egyptologists, we have the director of Jewish Studies at Temple, who is not an outlier by any stretch. She's also a Jew, who has written entire academic chapters and books on these topics, on this specific topic. And he says, yeah, it's just not true. There's some kind of collective memory about coming out from under the thumb somewhere, but it wasn't in Egypt, or it was a very small group of people. They weren't being let out by anybody. Like, it's this way of building a national identity, and it's written ages after it occurs. So, like, the only people that think that this is something that happened are evangelicals. That's it. And that's fine if you want to take that on faith, but we're not going to sit here and pretend like there's real evidence for this. There's not.
Yeah, I wanted good reasons I should believe is basically where we're at.
Sure. So one other thing I'll mention, and you guys have brought it up a couple times, is the fact that there were things written maybe decades after a biblical event. There are very, very few notable historical events that do not follow the pattern of being written decades or years or whatnot after the event happening. So that really isn't an argument.
Actually, you're entirely incorrect as far as argument against that. It's not an argument for it, but it is an additional, here is a layer where if you're going to come to me and say hundreds of eyewitnesses and I say which one wrote it down and the answer is 0, that's the argument. I'm not saying that it isn't possible for something historical to be passed down by mouth until somebody wrote it down. I'm saying your argument was bad because it would have required anyone to write it down, and simply none of them did. Now, as far as as far as those other events go,
one example in John, and then there's the other in Matthew, obviously.
No, not obviously, because again, none of these are contemporary accounts. We've already addressed that none of these are contemporary accounts of eyewitnesses. But on top of that, when you're talking about sorry?
No, so like this consensus of scholarship says, actually.
Yeah.
This is not the consensus of scholarship. This is not true. I mean, anyone can do their own research, and I do encourage people to do their own research. Again, I encourage people not to take,
when they don't have a fucking
if I can just have a moment.
No, you can't. You can't. Well, you'll take your moments when we give them to you. As far as your do your own research, the reason why people like to encourage that is because you know that there is information that's contradictory to what is actual research, the concept of research, the concepts of science, the concept of what is actually historical includes peer review. Now, by the way, when you want to talk about something that is historical, such as like people will point to, well, look at the great things said about Alexander the Great. Clearly there's going to be untruths in that. And yet you might accept Alexander the Great as a historical figure or not. The stakes are simply lower. As far as my day-to-day goes with whether or not I care if Alexander the Great had the fastest horse of the universe or whatever one of the weird claims were about it, even if I wanted to accept that at the moment and say, yeah, that's what I accept as history, it's not a hard acceptance of belief. And the moment somebody came with better information, my ability to adopt, adapt, or otherwise just dismiss what I had before is immediate and thorough. It's quite a bit different than, hey, we want you to address that, take that same standard of somebody said it. And so we're adopting these, what could be as historical rumors as historical fact. And we want you to dedicate your life and everything you believe and everything you do to this thing that if it were true, for example, the Exodus, if the Exodus was true, the amount of evidence for the Exodus would be unbelievably large that you wouldn't be able to deny it, and it simply isn't.
So let me ask you this. You're saying do your own research.
Can we move on also from the scientific? I didn't come to just
nope.
Let Jess is gonna talk about science. Let Jess. All right, we're just gonna mute you because you're just talking anyway. Jess is gonna make Jess's point, and then we will let you move on from the point you've lost.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, whatever. You say you've done the research. You're telling everybody else to do your own research. You're telling me, someone who spends all day talking to scholars about this exact topic, that I don't know what the consensus of scholarship is. Okay. Tell me right now, give me a list, 5 scholars off the top of your head that agree with the things that you're saying.
I cannot give you a list of any names.
Okay. So how much research have you really done if you can't even name one scholar that agrees with you and you want to tell me what the consensus of scholarship is?
Yeah, so again, I'm not a researcher as
clearly.
So I didn't even get to actually your names. Yeah, clearly, I'm not. But I've
So then how would you know what the consensus of scholarship is if you're not a researcher and you can't name any scholars? How would you know?
Well, I have done that research. The research of
let him move on. Right now it's sort of just embarrassing for him. So let him try and save face. You want to move on from the historical, sure, right? And you want to move on to what? The scientific?
Well, away from the scientific.
To what?
It is not just the scientific.
To what?
I would say the philosophical or the spiritual.
You want to move from, okay, so you're going to give me a good philosophical reason that is non-scientific. Have you watched our show before, by the way? I'm asking as an aside.
I have. I've watched, I think, a couple episodes with the host.
Okay.
I can't think of their names.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm just curious. All right, okay. So you want to give us a good philosophical / spiritual reason that we should believe, not why you perceive yourself believing, but why we should believe, right?
Sure, yeah.
Go ahead.
So, and let me pose this question first. Do you believe in absolute truth?
No, you're going to give us the reason. That's not how this works.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to do your Frank Turek. What does he call this? Where you're trying to set me up for, because I won't go down the line you're going, that you want to do the yo-yo thing with it and then go, yes. But is that an absolute truth, what you just said?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to facilitate the conversation. But so in terms of believing in God from the philosophical notion, I believe that absolute truth exists. And I believe that it is impossible for it not to exist. And so because I believe in that, all right,
define absolute truth.
Okay, I believe it's relatively self-defined, but
wait. Sorry.
You believe this, but you can't define it?
You can't define. You asked me if I believe in absolute truth.
I'm telling you. Oh wow.
How would we even know if we're talking about the same thing? Adam, how would we know?
I'm about to tell you guys what.
Okay, go ahead.
The definition I can give you for absolute truth is that the truth of whether it's morality, every truth, everything that that we say, even in terms of opinions, is in line with something that is called reality, what we call in terms of reality. And as opposed to relative truth, which means that it can meander. Something can be yes and no. Something can be true and untrue at the same time.
So when you ask me if I believe in absolute truth, you're asking me, do I believe that some things are plainly true and some things are plainly false, right?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes,
just so you know,
that.
that's not a single person who's trying to do the philosophical exercise you're about to try would have conceded to that definition. But now with that in mind, go ahead and proceed.
Sure. So when it comes to absolute truth, again, as I was saying, because absolute truth exists, because it is present in morality, as well as ethics and a great many other things, obviously everything encompasses our
What
whole
absolute
life.
truth is present in morality? Give us an example.
Give you an example, like a specific
of an absolute truth which is
sure.
present in morality.
Sure, murder is wrong.
So you don't support the death penalty?
No, I do not. No.
Good. I'm glad you don't support the death penalty. What? Okay. Well, unfortunately, we have to be slightly pedantic about this. What is your definition of murder?
Okay. I suppose my definition of murder would be the unprovoked killing of someone.
And
so the provoked killing of someone
intentional.
Is
the unprovoked intentional killing of someone. Sorry, I should say.
The unprovoked intentional killing of somebody is the definition you want to go with for murder right now. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And you're saying that's an absolute truth.
So what does it mean to provoke someone then?
But first of all,
you really fucking annoy me?
I don't care. As far as like if he wants to use that, that murder definition, I don't care. So your thing is saying that there's an absolute truth that the unprovoked killing of someone or something, anything alive, is murder?
No, a person.
Okay.
Human being.
And so that's an absolute truth is what you're saying. Not just something I would agree. I agree it is wrong, especially amongst humans, because I believe in secular humanism. However, I don't think that's an established fact of the universe. And I think you're saying with absolute truth that the universe recognizes that the killing of humans is wrong.
Exactly. And what I'm saying is that if someone were to come along and say, hey, in my culture, like we just murder other people and you just have to kind of accept that we do that in our culture, I would say, well, I mean, that's BS. Unfortunately, I don't care.
But to be an absolute truth, it would be BS
murder.
unto its own self. Like it would be an axiom, right? Whereas I can actually explain to you why it's wrong by the philosophy that I have adopted and why I've adopted it. And yet individuals would be able to philosophically disagree with it, and therefore it wouldn't be an absolute truth because you are capable of disagreeing with that. I would have gone something with like an absolute truth is that matter affects gravity or something. I would have used something.
So I mean, then like when Jephthah sacrifices his daughter to Yahweh.
Right. I asked about morality because what you said was wrong. What a moral truth was. If we wanted to establish absolute truths exist, you go with something that appears to be true no matter what and unto itself. But you had said morality, and that was a horrible example.
So you don't think that it's an absolute truth that murder is wrong, or
correct? I don't think it is an absolute truth. I think it is a truth.
I have a question.
I think it's a
truth. So I want to go on to that point, but I'll hear
how do you explain Jephthah in the Old Testament sacrificing his daughter to Yahweh? Unprovoked? That's not murder.
I'd have to look at that story again.
The Bible?
It doesn't run.
Yeah, it is very important.
I'm aware it's in the Bible.
It is very important that you read the Bible. You might find yourself not a theist.
He says that
he
will sacrifice the first person that leaves his house. His daughter comes out. He kills her. Sacrifice to Yahweh.
Yeah. What about God killing the firstborns of the people who didn't put the blood over top of their archway, over their doorway? You're saying God did violate the absolute truth that murder is wrong there, right?
the God, who is the author of life, has every right to take it away.
Oh, got it. So it isn't an absolute truth because it's relative
Right.
to the
It doesn't
individual.
apply to God.
It is an absolute truth. It is an absolute
No, it's a
truth.
relative
But absolute
truth.
truth is no.
Is it wrong?
can't be
Is
a relative.
unprovoked killing of humans wrong or not?
No, is the unprovoked killing from one human to another wrong? That is.
Oh,
that is
I
it.
see.
So
I
that's
see.
not, so it doesn't
So we
apply
give
to-
exceptions to this creator of humans, but that's not relative.
It's not about exception.
It's exactly
not
about
about
exception.
It is. That's exactly
Because
what it
if
is.
you- well,
1000%
okay,
about
so let me
exceptions.
so let me put it to the test in terms of telling a creator what the creator is allowed to do to its creation. Again, we're making the assumption that God exists for this.
I get the exercise, and I'm already ready to skip by it. How about when
So
God told
God isn't the
humans?
standard
You're
of
already ready
absolute
to skip
truth?
by it because you know
No,
that
I'm
there
ready to
is
skip
no-
by it because it's
you know
hard.
that there is
I'm
no-
ready to skip by it because I already know the
Okay,
pedantic
sure.
exercise you're doing here, and the whole argument is stupid. But we can go to one where, how
sure.
about when you had God's people murdering the boys and the children and the innocent under his command? So now it would be a relative thing, right? Because yes, it's technically a human killing another human unprovoked, but that was under God's command, right? That's why that exception's allowed.
You know, it's too
Even though
bad
it's a
that I
human
spent
to a
like
human.
half today talking to Josh Bowen about genocide in the Old Testament. It's really not apropos at all to this argument. You're telling me that God has a different standard, right? Okay, it's not God can do whatever he wants to humans, but humans can't do whatever they want to other humans. That's not relative. I mean, it is, but that's what you're saying. But then God says, go wipe those bitches out, right? Go wipe the Amalekites out. And Saul doesn't kill them all. And then Yahweh punishes Saul for not killing them all. He said, I said every one, ho. So
That's the quote.
how
by the way.
then? That's the quote from Yahweh
In the Bible.
directly. Yeah.
Yeah, he says ho.
How then is that not? There's a problem there. Humans are killing other humans
Unprovoked.
unprovoked.
in terms of war or.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you adding something? It's okay if
That
it's
makes it
during
not
war, even
absolute.
though it's unprovoked, because the absolute truth was humans shouldn't kill other humans unprovoked. Unless
But during war.
Why do you need to kill children during war?
Killing someone is not.
Yeah. Why do you need to kill the male children, but you take
kill?
the virgins for yourself?
Right, the virgin slaves and the war and killing the children, the boys, and the non-virgin girls.
Again, you guys are taking verses that I'd have to go and look it up.
I
myself.
bet you do.
I'm
I bet
not
you
You
do.
should.
You're right,
You
you're
should
right.
go and look it up.
You're right. You're right.
'Cause
So
I
we'll move
spend
to the
a
next
lot
one.
of time
I've
in the
read
Bible.
these verses.
We'll move on to the next one.
Again, if you just
That's
cherry
fine.
pick it,
That's
I'm sure.
Oh yes, it's cherry picking.
No, we're cherry picking.
Oh my God.
Woo,
Look,
buddy.
we agree. We're going to say that the three of us, you, Jess, and I all agree that you, in your own words, need to go do your research. Totally agree. So what's your next philosophical argument?
My next philosophical argument.
Mhm.
Let's see.
Because you fucked up the absolute truth one. You've given so many exceptions. So let's do a different one, please.
I don't think so. I
know you don't think so, because if you
don't think so,
recognize,
but like everybody in the chat does.
Sure.
And
well,
everybody
we're
that's
not
listening that's
gonna
not Christian.
argument ad populum or anything. It's not because everyone in the chat agrees
No, I
with
mean, I
us. It's
will.
because your logic sucked, and if you realize that, you wouldn't probably be a theist anymore. I understand
Here's the thing
that
that
you
I just
like
want to
that.
say that I spent 24, 25, somewhere in there in the evangelical church, right? I made all of these shit ass arguments for years. And I refused to see what anybody else was saying because I knew that the Bible was inerrant. And so I had to do some sort of mental gymnastics to make it all make sense. And it doesn't make sense. The way that I got out of that, extensive scholarship, extensive. And that's why when we're sitting here talking about this is something that I have dedicated the last decade of my life to. And that's how I left the church. And I wasn't trying to leave the church. I was trying to prove the Bible so that I could stay in the church because I was desperate to hang on to that faith.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? You are in a position, whether you want to see this or not, where you have to make everything fit into this one very narrow pathway.
Oh,
it has to be that way.
That I can disagree with. Sure, that I can disagree with. I by no means do I believe that everything makes sense to us as humans. By no means.
Yeah.
And it's not
So,
just
no.
this. I mean, there are so many
Yeah.
things.
So that's the thing, is
science,
saying that. Yeah. You're saying what I said, right? Not everything has to make sense to us as humans. Therefore, I can write off all of this internally inconsistent shit that's happening because his ways are higher than our ways. And that's a cop-out. Sorry, it's a cop-out. You can't sit here and try and make arguments that we can understand God and we can defend the things that he's done, but also the things that don't make sense, we can't defend them. It doesn't. We just have to accept
chances.
If a God were to exist, by no means does he need me to defend him. The only reason that I called today is because I believe that there are people out there who aren't necessarily sold on either. And I think that they should do their own research, not just genuine, but not just their own genuine research, but also spiritual research, to go back
spiritual
research. And to really think and to really pray.
Adam, that's all great. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
It's a bit preachy. It's a bit proselytizing, but whatever. We're just gonna last chance this. You've tried a few.
Okay.
We're gonna move on, unless you can give us now, last chance, a good reason for us, Jess and I, to believe in God.
A good reason for you. What's your name, by the way? I never got your name.
I'm Jimmy.
Jimmy.
Damn, I had the chance to rebrand myself right there, and I've squandered it. I am Xander Cruikshank.
Just two.
Yeah, but no, I'm Jimmy. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, by no means is there one thing that I can say that will make you
cool. We're gonna move on to the next callers.
There's nothing, obviously.
Well, I do want to have 30 things you could tell me.
Sure, but what I can say is that in terms of let's go back into philosophical, even if just for a moment. You said you don't want to stay in absolute truth anymore.
Well, we were getting nowhere.
We were never
we?
There,
and we disagree on why, but we were getting nowhere. So let's go to the next one.
Let's take away the morality aspect of it. Let's take away the morality expert.
No. You're not going to do a different version of. You got a new category because the last one was so bad. New category, a new proof, a new good reason why I should either believe or I need to just start spending most of my days with you because you clearly have something that I'm missing. Sure.
Yeah. Do you smoke?
Sure.
So that you want to share with me?
Sorry?
No.
Nothing. Sorry.
Nothing. It's all good.
No, I do not. It's all good. So I guess this delves into both philosophical and maybe even scientific as well. It's interesting because I think that one aspect of the, discussion when it comes to Christianity and atheism that's now been put off to the side, I think, is the discussion on intelligent design. And the discussion on intelligent design is a very good discussion because it leads us also back to quite a few places. First of all, that we know a lot of things, but also there are many things that we don't know. The intelligent design argument for God. All right.
Adam. Before you oh man, I can't even say the word I'm trying to say. Obfuscate. Before you obfuscate here, let me just get to the bottom of when you say intelligent design. Are you suggesting that something instead of evolution?
No. So evolution, there's macro evolution, there's micro evolution.
Okay. No, there isn't. By the way, no, there isn't. Those are made up. Well,
no. I mean, even
no, there isn't. No, there isn't. They're the same evolution. There's no such thing as these are religious terms. These are not used in laboratories. These are not used. You've been talking about consensus all goddamn night. There's not biological consensus among scientists that there is some difference between micro and macro. The difference between micro and macro, if you want to get pedantic about it, is time. It's the same evolution. It's just time applied. So do you believe in the theory of evolution as it is currently, or do you accept rather the theory of evolution as it is currently represented by biological science? Yes or no?
In terms of
it's a yes or no
question to human beings,
you can go cells to man. Sure.
No, I would not.
Then
would
what
not
is,
buy that.
if you
Okay,
want to sit
toodles.
here and give me argument after argument and claim you've done the research, and the consensus among so-and-so and so-and-so, when the theory of evolution is such a fact, it is so well supported, it's actually more well supported than the theory of gravity. If you want to sit here and use the consensus argument, but then conveniently forget it when you want to then use words like microevolution and macroevolution in your final part of your, what would be a core to your final chance argument, you do understand that now we would have to go all the way back and debate on whether or not evolution as it's currently understood is the most valid theory and consensus among scientists for how humans exist. We would have to first get to that before we get to whatever silly pedantic argument you have next. You get that, right? And what a waste of time that would be.
No, I don't. I agree it would be a waste of time, and I don't think
I'm so glad. Do you want to just say goodbye then? Because it would be a waste of time. Shall we move on?
Well,
do you have something?
I just want to quickly say that the intellectual or the intelligent design in terms.
I got tired of listening, honestly. I
don't care.
I just want to say that the intelligent, there's no, if you're going to say, you're going to come back to some kind of scientific, but also philosophical argument, and then you're going to say intelligent design, and then I'm going to say, okay, as in opposition to evolution? Well, no, because there's micro and there's macro. No, there isn't. So you're not in a scientific realm. And as far as a philosophical realm goes, we're either headed for Pascal's wager, which is where I think some of the other absolute truth was headed for, or we're headed for something can't come from nothing. Prove that, you fucking shit. That's a quality of the universe. And we're talking about before the universe and several other objections. And so it's just wholly, entirely, and I'm sorry that I keep doing this. I did it on the show with Aron as well. We've just given 40 minutes to a complete waste of goddamn time. And I apologize to the audience for doing that again, because it was one after the other of bad proof after bad proof. And if I'm sitting here and saying, if you want to come to me and go, okay, give me reasons to believe evolution is true, I can literally give you one after another, after another, after another. And the fucking hilarious thing is, if only the one existed and none of the others after the others, they are individually strong enough to support evolution without the others. It's such a wildly fucking supported theory. It's crazy for someone to not believe it. It's actually like, it's a level of either cognitive dissonance or I simply refuse to learn, because if you we could with not a single fucking fossil and only DNA demonstrate that evolution is obviously a fact. And yet people, well, but it's just a theory and micro and macro. The moment you say micro and macro, I realize you don't know what the fuck you're talking about at all.
That's the moment you realized you didn't know what the fuck he was talking about?
Regarding
as
evolution.
Soon as he said, what about John? I was like, yeah, just fucking launch yourself into the sun, because that's
regarding evolution is of course the caveat there. I don't get any person. I get Mormons, for example, being able to figure this one out, because they've figured out a way to go, actually, I do believe in evolution, but all the other God shit is true. And then they only get down to claims where, well, you weren't there in Jackson City, Missouri in 6,000 years ago to see if the Adam and Eve event happened. So I have a bunch of unprovable, like, at least they can hide somewhere there. It doesn't make it a good reason to believe it, but you can't take away certain things if they're going to adapt to evolution. It's these people who go, I don't care what's obviously true. I simply refuse to adapt, that I just go, Jesus fucking Christ. Then what's the point of you? And how are you going to come to me, who actually has a rather good understanding of the theory of evolution beyond what anyone actually needs? I'm not just trying to brag about how smart I am, though somebody should. I don't need the amount I have.
God.
I am a tech god. I don't need the amount I have to actually understand that evolution is a demonstrated fact. You don't even need much more than a freshman bio course, which is why I see freshman bio course level understandings fucking smoking theists all the time. And it's just wild.
Sorry, all I'm going to say is that if you're going to come to me and tell me what the scholarly consensus about like the archaeological data for the Bible is, you better come ready. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, thank you for the
Come
person in the
ready.
live chat. I'm almost positive the person in the live chat's being sarcastic. Wow, Jimmy, you are very smart. Thank you. Everyone just please talk about how smart I am. I'm tired of, I'm a fucking clown for a living. Are you guys kidding me? Anyway, moving on to the next person. We're going to talk to an atheist in Israel, which is, I just think, just an interesting conversation. Just to begin with who you are, I have more questions than answers, I'm sure, but we'll just stick to trying to answer your question. Go ahead,
Sure.
Nikolai in Israel. Excited to talk to you.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, guys and girls. I'm pretty excited myself. I was thinking about how I'm going to get straight to the thing and not do a whole preamble, but I feel like I think you need some context here. So my name is Nikolai, and I've lived in Israel since I was 3 years old. I'm 35 now. I'm an atheist. I was raised in a Russian Orthodox Christian Russian Orthodox family, but in a Jewish country, as they call it, a country that doesn't have separation of religion and state, and obviously that comes with a very religious community and society in general. I live in a pretty secular area, but there are various pressures that my atheist peers tend to succumb to by their families, or mostly by families, like having like a religious wedding, or bar mitzvahs, or the circumcisions, whatever. I really don't like being even present at these types of events. They make me cringe very hard.
Yeah.
But removing yourself entirely from the situation results eventually in ostracizing yourself.
Yeah.
And basically removing yourself from the community, and not just the events. This has repercussions, could have repercussions in the work environment, like why are you not showing up to the wedding of your colleague or something like that that's expected?
Yeah.
And generally speaking, my question is, after all of this huge preamble I wasn't going to do,
Sure.
Do you have any advice for coping with these kind of situations when you don't really want to be there? You're objecting morally to what's going on, but you quote unquote have no choice. Of course, I understand I have a choice, but sometimes the price seems to accumulate to an unacceptable degree.
I'll let Jess go first. I do have something here in mind. I'll let Jess go.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure that I'm the best person to answer this. Not because I can't sympathize or empathize, but simply because after and these two things aren't directly related, but after I sort of walked away from the faith, my parents, my sisters, so my parents, they would still say that they're Christian, but I don't talk to my mom really much at all, and that's for a separate reason. But she is still identifying as a Christian, but there's no real interaction there. So there's not a chance that I'll be really invited to anything that she's doing that's very religiously oriented. My dad, he also identifies as a Christian, but again, doesn't do any of these sort of, I don't know, events, for lack of a better term, that are predicated on religion. And so really, the only times that I have to interact with religion that I don't want to would be if I go to a funeral for someone, or perhaps if there's a wedding. And those things are very manageable because you just sort of grin and bear it, and nobody's usually trying to shove it down your throat. Sometimes at a funeral you'll get proselytizing, and that makes me angry. But I just sort of try to respect the family of the dead who's mourning. And that's not really what you're asking about. I get it. So I struggle to give advice in this situation because I don't know what I would do in those scenarios, because when I left, I was like, I'm like, y'all can miss me with that bullshit. And I know that's not
Yep.
the same for everybody. And I wouldn't recommend, I wouldn't tell someone, well, you should just cut off all of that. Don't do anything, right? Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just hoping that maybe Jimmy has some better
Oh, I got
advice.
that. No, so
Yeah.
the interesting thing here is I actually can empathize with this a little bit more than some of the calls that come in from other religions, because Mormonism is such usually a specific experience that's usually unique. However, the tightness of the fundamentalism is such that it's the same. I mean, I won't say I can say for sure I know what it's like to be a Jew in Israel who doesn't want to be Jewish anymore. That's a specific experience too, and I wouldn't try to say something quite so, but I can empathize.
Not even technically Jewish, if I may interject.
Oh,
one
sure.
moment. My
Oh, you said Orthodox.
my father, right? My father was a Jew.
Sure.
My mother is a Christian. So according to Judaism, I'm not a Jew, and according to Christian, I'm maybe if I was baptized.
Right.
Question mark. So
Right.
So I'm in a gray area where, according to the laws of my own country, I am a second-grade citizen. I am not allowed by law to marry a Jewish partner unless I do it abroad, and then the country has to respect it based on international agreements and all kinds of lunacy like that. So yeah.
I assure you, I would love to go on like. This is one of those tricky things that because of anti-Semitism, I can't generally talk about my full feelings about Israel in general without YouTube being like, is he going fascist on us right now? And I'm not. But yes, clearly there are systemic issues there. Clearly, I mean, there's issues with that and modesty and everything. The only advice I can give you is sort of tangential to the advice I would give a Mormon who is going to leave Mormonism amongst a heavily Mormon community. Because there is what you were describing about it can have repercussions to work. That's huge. If you live in, not even if you just live in Utah, if you live in Idaho and you're tight in your Mormon community, if you live in Wyoming, if you live in Montana, there's a good chance your employer is somebody you met at church. That's because they are that sort of way about things. There's a good chance that most of your friends, the people that you take your kids to visit, and the like kids that they play with, their parents, and the kids that people you're willing to leave your kids with, you're probably not just losing. This is why I say when you leave Mormonism, you leave your life and you start looking for a new one. So of course it's devastating to leave Mormonism. Mormons will act like it's this tremendous, obvious pointing to the truth of like, well, how come so many ex-Mormons are so miserable? But they only are usually thinking about the people who are freshly out of the church who just lost their friends, in many cases lost their
religious
family.
trauma.
Yeah, lost their family, lost their jobs, or lost how well they're treated at their job. Not to mention the way that their genuine identity might be being emerged, and now they're being shamed for wanting to see what it's like to express themselves in a queer fashion, wanting to see what alcohol is like. Because if you no longer believe, there's literally no reason not to try. Like, so now they're also going into these giant shame spirals. So the same advice I give to everybody in your situation and theirs is the most important thing to you right now is other community. And it sounds maybe overly simplistic, and yet every time I sort of interrogate people on it, they're not doing much of it. It's really, I'm waiting to see if a secret community emerges among my community instead of, even if it starts on a subreddit or a Discord chat or going somewhere online. And I always recommend people start with a hobby. And I used to say start with atheist groups. Turns out there's a bunch of fascists in there too. So not every atheist group's going to be great. You got to find the right atheist group. Maybe look for more things like secular humanist groups. I would say skeptic groups too, but I left a skeptic group that didn't even know I was lurking on Facebook not too long ago because they were starting to go down like some fucking tarot and astrology bullshit. And I was like, I thought this was a skeptic group. The fuck is this place? So now I'm finding my favorite communities, and it's in a way that is affecting. I've thought about transitioning my entire life and career to purely woodworking about 1,000 times in the last 3 years. If I ever wake up and have that big of an existential crisis and I'm ready to do it, I know the first 5 people I'm calling, and I've met them in woodworking communities. So it's literally...
Please add me to that list. I would love to go.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Come on, man. Oh man, you and me, a guy from Israel, a woodworker. I've heard about. There's a famous woodworker from Israel that I've heard of. I don't remember his name.
Honestly, what you said about finding a new other communities, and yeah, I mean that's largely what I've been doing throughout like the last decade, I suppose. Mostly on the internet. It got to a place where I have my little corner with my friends, and we come visit each other internationally. So yeah, that's been working out great.
Sure.
And slowly I'm building kind of like this secular or atheist compartment in my life.
Backup plan.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, both of you, and I really appreciate you guys taking my call.
Yeah, check in later. If you find out more stuff, if you find even better advice than that, I definitely need to know it because I need to share it with other people. Yeah. So if you find more and better, let us know for sure.
All right. I will be in touch. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Jimmy, I'd like to know what kind of wood you're working with.
I've been a woodworker for years. You're not going to surprise me with a pun anymore.
Have.
You're just going to go with wood you're working with when we're talking about, I've got jokes ready with the fact that I'm constantly lubricating shafts. Okay. I'm just saying where you're starting right now. So much more content. And you just went with the basic woodworking. My goodness.
Of course I did.
My goodness. And then you can start categorizing
I'm not working
the woods
with other people's wood. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's my wood.
So I would know all those details. Oh, okay.
No one else lives here. I'm very alone. It's only my wood that I'm working, but I'm working it.
Okay.
I'm working
I believe you.
I'm lubing those shafts. Let's talk to Donald in Georgia. Donald is an atheist.
Sorry.
I don't get it at all. Donald, what do you want to talk about?
Not Donald.
Okay. You're still on your wood puns,
how's
aren't
it going?
you? Hey, Donald.
How's it going, guys?
It's going all right.
Hi.
I think I have an interesting story that you may have never heard before, so much to where Dan Barker is probably going to write my forward of my book, but that's neither here nor there. I am number 50 of the original 52 members of the Clergy Project, and I am Dave the Missionary in the book from Daniel Dennett, which in London La Scola, and they're actually making to a play in New York next month, but I'm not in it, and I won't go there at this particular point. I'm just sharing this to tell you where I'm coming from.
Yeah, we're talking to a certified badass is what I'm hearing.
This is a story of Christian nationalism and how these Christian nationalists reached out to me and made me their foot soldier. So I grew up as a small town in Texas, and I was physically, sexually, mentally abused by my mother, physically abused by my sister, sexually abused by her and my cousin. And it brought me to a point to where I basically turned to food to help, self-medicate, and
I know that game.
350 pounds by the time I became 350 pounds by the time I graduated. And so I actively was contemplating on how to end my life. And so I was working at a pizza restaurant, had no perspective, no future. And I happened to work with a guy who just became a Christian, and he began to tell me his story. And I believed hook, line, and sinker. And next thing I know, I'm being baptized and a member of the local Independent Baptist Church there. And the day after I was baptized, the pastor actually gave me a voter's card and, led me to vote, and basically said that, if you're a Christian, you need to be Republican. And
hey, Donald,
we're talking about the beginning of the war.
Donald, real quick. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, and I don't want this to come off as rude because the story sounds great. This just might not be the format. Are we heading toward a question and a discussion, or is this more of a you're wanting to call in and share your story? Because if it is, I'm saying a different show. If you contact maybe even Jess, but myself, and shoot an email, we could talk about having you on for sharing the story.
Long form.
But that's not the format of this show.
Well, basically what I'm trying to say is that I conducted war against Christian nationalism, and for years and years, people thought I was in Asia, when I was actually in America, and every single dollar they gave me would have gone to someone who was going halfway around the world to convince them and deceive them like they deceived me. And because of that, thousands upon thousands of people had never heard. Thousands of people didn't believe. And so I really don't know what the purpose of the show is outside of, I know that you're atheists and I
Sure.
agree with you personally, but what I'm trying to say is that I mean, I'm coming out for the very first time saying, hey, I'm Donald Newland, I'm an atheist, and so I believe that my story is a story that needs to be told and heard, and I'm going to be on podcast pretty soon from
Sure.
different people that you know, and so I just didn't really know the purpose of the show, and if my particular call doesn't quite fit the genre of that, I do apologize.
Yeah, no, it doesn't really, but I'm not saying it doesn't
apologies
fit
necessary.
anything, Donald. What I would just say is my email is dearmratheist@gmail.com. You can find all kinds of contact info down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Basically, this show is, we're meant to try and be talking to people who either currently believe in God or are in the process of deconverting, who might need some guidance, some questions. So like the last person who was an atheist was asking about how to cope with the fact that there's so many consequences to no longer engaging with religion around. And then the person prior to that had a lot of terrible arguments for why God exists. But
my call is equal, because I came out of the closet, I jumped in the deep end of the pool and did a cannonball, and my wife has left. Everyone thinks I'm of the devil.
Sure.
And I've lost all my friends and whatever. And so in that very same vein, what I heard in the call before, even though the context of my particular situation it's much more in depth, it's the fact that, hey, I'm sitting here in a house in Georgia with my 2 wiener dogs, and my life is falling apart all around me, and I'm trying to put all this back together, trying to figure out how to go beyond this when, this was my orchestration. I knew it would happen, but so to me, it's very similar to a previous caller that, I don't have all the answers, even though I've gone through all this. Is that, I have similar situations where, I don't know where to go from here.
Sure. So what I would, and so generally those are the types of calls, that we're taking, is usually somebody who wants to share a little bit and then sort of ask where to go, because presumably, I mean, I'm a recovered from religion, recovered past tense person. We try to make sure that we've got people on there. What I would say here is, first of all, obviously the advice from the last call is going to be the same. It's going to be, that'll be the beginning here. The thing that we didn't talk about with the last caller, because the last caller wasn't currently dealing with the struggles of deconversion. I don't know what you've just whispered. It's very, very distracting though, Jess.
Therapy.
Yeah. That's where I was going to go with it, is the thing on top of the getting community. I assume, since you're already familiar with the that evangelical movement. Sorry, you already said the name of it and it slipped from my mind. But are you aware of seculartherapy.org already?
Well, yeah, of course. I was, the Secular Therapist Project, and I'm under a therapist care from that. And
Sure.
I got 12 free lessons from this particular person through the Clergy Project, and then
Excellent.
And I paid him through the years, and now it's free. But here's the bottom line: I've received 5 death threats from the faithful.
Sure.
And
I've been there.
Your average person won't do that, but
right.
There are people who are unhinged in every single form of life or whatever. And so, I'm not a big gun guy. I've never even fired a gun, but I have a shotgun that I sleep with right near my bed every night because,
Yeah, I have a rifle. Same deal. Same deal. I live in rural Texas, so if somebody figures out where I am, I'm
from Texas originally, and so I pretty much know where you're from. But here's what I'm saying is I believe that my call, even not in the grander scheme, but in the reality of previous calls, actually had some relevance.
Yeah, so I'm
Certainly.
not trying to argue about whether you had the relevance or not. I was simply saying, as far as shows that I do, others do, as far as just a sort of thing of sharing your story, we have other shows that are ideal for that. And that's why I was suggesting contact me, because we could potentially talk, as you've said, you're going to be doing other podcasts and stuff. We could potentially talk on that format. As far as, again, as far as the story sharing goes, the background, the what's happening and everything. But otherwise, if you have other questions or other topics that you're wanting Jess and I to speak to, I guess in a way I'm trying to non-arrogantly say the way this show is people call, especially atheist callers, are going to call with a question or a topic for the hosts to discuss with them. It's not so much for a person to come on and talk about their experience and what message they're wanting to get out, unless it's done extremely briefly, in which case I guess I don't mind, except for that it clogs up the call lines. But with your story, it could be the case that there's an appropriate venue that we want to put that on.
I would like to say that if you want to reach out to me separately, I'd love to have you on. No problem. I would love to have you on my channel to talk with you. And I know there's several other people, and it sounds like you found many of them. And I'm sure Jimmy would also be happy to either talk with you himself or connect you with the sort of appropriate show. But I'm sure that your story is incredibly important and people need to hear it. So feel free to reach out.
Yep.
So how do I contact you personally and give you my phone number so we can talk privately off of this particular genre or particular broadcast?
I would say email Jimmy.
Yeah, or her. Yeah, in the description, my email's in there, but the email that I mentioned earlier, dearmratheist@gmail.com, is my personal email. It gets you right to me. And then if you want Jess's channel's information, the link to Jess's channel is there as well, and you can go from there. But we do want to move on to the final topics and the final calls.
Thank you so much, and sorry if I misunderstood the purpose of the show.
No,
but at the same time, thank you for reaching out and at least hearing my story in some capacity, and I do appreciate
I imagine
that.
we'll hear more of it soon. Yeah. Thank you, Donald.
You have a great night. Bye.
You too.
There's an individual, and they hid mods hid the message, which is fine. I trust the mods thing, but who said Jimmy is bluffing when I was talking about having a gun. If you want, but I'll tell you, it's an AK-74, and it's literally within reach of me as I sleep. So, but whatever.
I thought you were going to say the comment that said HQ is hot.
No. I wasn't going to go. I saw chick. No? Chick is hot.
No, whatever.
That's what I saw.
I mean, I'm not referring to you. So.
Yeah. Well, it could be. I'm quite the chick. I'm sure I would make a hot chick. I don't know. Is chick a specifically gendered term? I suppose it is. I think I was conflating it with like babe, because guys can be babes now, right? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like they could always be babes, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. The individual may have just been being silly, but I grew up as a Republican, you all understand, right? Same. I grew up as a Republican, and while I am a socialist now, you should know socialists aren't largely anti-gun either.
No.
We sort of think that we're going to... Now, that said, I wish we lived in a gun-controlled world and country. I don't advocate for guns. I quite the opposite. But in as much as I'm going to be surrounded by good old boys in the area that ain't... I don't like your God shitting upon persona that I found on the internet last night. As long as I'm surrounded by that, I'm going to fucking sleep next to an assault rifle. Unless I had a partner which felt uncomfortable about that, in which case I would probably build a secret compartment into my bed or something to contain it more better.
I mean, one of my earliest memories is my dad putting a gun in my hand when I was like 4 or 5 and being like, shoot at that target. And I was like, hell yeah.
Oh yeah. By the way, I'm an excellent shot. That's the other part of it. I'm ready for another Theist call. And I'll just let the screener know that Nika, you are free to drop as well. We've got Isaiah.
Better than the other one.
I don't know if it's Isaiah or Isaiah, but maybe that's what I need to know. Wait, what had just happened? Right as I answered it, the call seems to have terminated. So we'll see. We'll see if we get Isaiah back on the line, because it might be because it was the web caller. So I suppose We're going to be talking to Cassie in California first. Pronouns they, them.
California calls.
California. Cassie, how are you doing? Cassie?
Hi, Cassie.
Cassie. Oh, wait. Hang on. This might have been my fault.
You muted her.
Cassie, can you hear me now?
Hi, can you hear me?
I do.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
I want to say I've been watching Jimmy for a while. Heathen Queen, this is my first time seeing you, and you've stolen my whole heart as a sassy academic woman.
Thank you.
I think anybody
You
just likes
shutting
anyone.
down that first theist caller, that was everything to me.
I think people
I grew
particularly
up doing debate, and
She said, Jimmy,
like
be quiet.
men are like that TM. So I was like so excited.
I think people like the co-host that can make me shut up is what people like about Jess. Because otherwise,
I would
very
also
special telling everyone.
yeah.
Sorry, Jimmy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just it's been a really interesting show to watch. And yes, Jimmy, you are very smart.
Oh, thank you.
smart.
You didn't have to say that. Unprompted
big
is what I
brain.
loved. What I loved is how you just said that for no reason, and it was totally unprompted, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I also want to say that Xander Crookshank sounds like your wizard Sona.
Oh, it's definitely my
from
porn
earlier.
name, though, but sure.
Okay.
Onlyfans.com/Xander Crookshank.
It's all feet pics.
It's in the Shire.
See, you really shouldn't say that. The chat's going to go looking. The chat is going to go looking for
Worst
that.
case
not gonna
scenario,
find
I'm
it.
telling the
Yeah.
truth, and I'm going to make millions.
Worst case scenario.
That's
Worst
the
case
worst.
scenario for those that go looking. All right. Anyway, Cassie.
Go ahead, Cass.
So I'm from California, and I grew up
Me too.
at a church that switched from Baptist to non-denominational, which, you know, is always a good sign. I don't want to dox myself at all. But basically they were like, oh, the Baptist convention doesn't want to be super homophobic anymore. Guess we're not Baptist anymore, is basically what happened. And last year I exposed a sexual harassment scandal at the church. There was a bit of investigation. Things haven't really gone anywhere from there, but a bunch of people reached out to me going, actually, this church is like super duper corrupt, and we all have a bunch of stories spanning a bunch of different experiences. And I definitely experienced like religious abuse, purity culture, etc., while attending that church. And I was wondering if you had any advice about like going after and spreading awareness about a specific church in a community that's being harmful, or, you know, just how to mobilize socially, because I don't really have funds for legal action and don't really know where to go from here, since everything sort of came to a halt last year after a bunch of women came forward about the same person sexually harassing them at the church.
I'll tell you one thing you can do if you want. You can send me the information and I'll put it all over my social media.
Okay, but I'm going to give
and
you
don't
good
have to-
advice instead.
No, I'm not saying you have to do it with your name. You can do it anonymously if you want.
Yeah.
It's fine. Because it is something I do on my channel. I tell people stories about this stuff.
I'm just trying to remember which organization it is. I would first, because you can actually, by going public first, you can make it harder. I would first contact the Freedom from Religion Foundation,
Yeah.
who, if when you tell them your story, they may take it up as something. These are people who are very, very interested in making sure that religion isn't allowed to cross certain legal bounds, and it sounds like that may be the case here. And
Also,
so,
Americans United.
yeah, I would definitely reach out first before you let Heathen Queen set the whole thing on fire and find out if there are legal remedies.
I live with a lawyer. Don't worry about it.
that doesn't help anybody. You live with a lawyer.
It helps. It helps us.
It helps
It was
you.
one of those really weird things where I was like, wow, creepy DMs from a guy. And I was just really fed up and posted screenshots of it. And I tagged the church and I was like, hey, come get him. Because it was the head pastor's son.
Yeah, so
I was like, come get him. And a bunch of other women came forward and were like, oh, he's also been like this to me.
Yeah, so when you reach out,
some social media.
Right. When you reach out, you want to include all of that information and make sure that everything is there. I'm not saying it's too late, but especially when a legal boundary has been crossed, as again, it sounds like has been the case here, you want to try and minimize that. So now you know, I guess, for next time. And it's America, so don't you worry. There'll be a next time. But there's always a next time. We never run out of next times. But yeah, I would definitely seek legal remedy with the legal issue. Even if you can't afford a lawyer, there are groups and organizations that are out there. And this is just starting from the secular side of things. The fact that we have an organization out there, Freedom from Religion, who specifically goes on deals like this. There are other legal organizations out there to provide resources for people who, for example, are in Me Too situations where somebody's specifically not just has a position of power over a person, but leverages that power to get quote unquote consent to things that otherwise wouldn't have been consented to. Those sorts of organizations and such also exist. But Freedom from Religion might be where I start, because I'll bet you, even if they say this isn't really in our wheelhouse, they know whose wheelhouse it's in. Absolutely. Or Jess can set the whole thing on fire. Either way.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if you need someone to scorch the earth.
Yeah.
I have I don't know. I would say a little over 250,000 people that might be interested in hearing about it.
Yeah.
So, if you want someone to do that for you,
it's
I'm
if you
your girl.
want.
But I do suggest all of that, right? So Freedom from Religion, Americans United, ACLU, potentially, there are a lot of resources that I think are, less fun than me just blowing shit up, but are probably a better first step.
Absolutely.
It depends if you want justice or revenge, and I support both, by the way. That's not saying justice is necessarily better.
I've definitely had some burn it to the ground tendencies, because there were stories of mandatory reporting not being followed through. When I was a kid, they actually handed out anti-Prop 8 signs here in California, which I don't know if anybody still has proof of, but I feel like that would have gotten their tax exemption revoked because they crossed political lines.
Is this the Mormon Church?
No, it's not. It's a Baptist. Right. It started off as a Baptist church. Oh. I definitely have a lot of stories. They were also made aware of over the course of us coming forward that I was abused as a minor on campus. There were multiple people who were abused by other students on campus, so they are aware of sexual assault that has happened on church grounds they haven't even acknowledged.
The other group
the
other group you might want to consider contacting with some of these additional details is the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, because this is now also getting sort of into the, not only are we violating our constitutional or our law requirements, our tax requirements and everything and all the things that we're supposed to do there, not only is that the case, it sounds like it's getting into and by the way, the stuff we're doing could be considered potentially either hate crimes or at least hate group representative. And that's where the SPLC comes in pretty good too. The reason I asked about if it was a Mormon church is because the Mormon Church is largely behind Prop 8. And it was their funding and canvassing and activating members to do these call banks from other states calling Californians. You got to make sure, get out there and protect the sanctity of marriage and annul existing gay marriages and take rights away that have already been given to people. That was the Mormon Church.
My high school was located between a Catholic church and a Mormon church. So I had a lot of Mormon friends growing up. and things like that. So the whole Prop 8 thing, yeah, lots of Mormon involvement, but not a Mormon church at all that I grew up going to. But it's good to know, like, that there are resources and steps I can take going forward.
Mormon churches near high schools, by the way, is becoming common because they do both their release from high school, where you can take one period off, go over to the church and take a church class and come back, but you don't get any high school credit for it. So you have to make it up otherwise. But then also the Mormons love it because they put dances and these youth events and stuff so that you can invite people to basically walk from the school to the church and try and start converting high schoolers. So it's a whole thing.
I wanted to quickly
I've actually never been inside a Mormon church.
Lucky you.
So I'm kind of glad for that. Yeah,
I'm glad
for
for churches. They're rather boring on the inside compared to other churches. They're rather dreck.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say this, all jokes aside. I mean, like, I will forever be willing to scorch the earth. But that being said, I also happen to know a lot of people. I have a lot of good connections, as does Jimmy. So if you want to message me offline and not have me, oh, maybe you don't, I don't know.
I have zero connections. Nobody likes me.
So if you want to message me sort of off here with no public, like, anything, I will do what I can to get you in touch with the people that I know. And that'll be completely confidential. I just give you the connections if I have them.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that. It was just one of those things where, like, everybody was telling me, like, all of these stories of different things, like them stealing money from a girl who was supposed to go on a mission trip but decided not to go, and they wouldn't give her back her donations, and, like, things like that were just so horrific and abhorrent, and that one of the student leaders was a groomer and had a relationship with two different high school students while I attended that church, you know. So there are things there that are just not okay, and they're kind of seen as like a cornerstone of the community, and I'd really like to see some accountability held. They also refused to let me record a conversation. Like, we tried to have a sit down with them, and they were like, and I was like, we would like to record for our safety, me and one of the other women who had came forward. And they were like, are you sure you don't just want more stuff to post to your social media? Is what they actually said to me. So there is a little bit of
tag me in
that.
Sorry, you're they them. Tag me in.
Unfortunately, California is two-party consent, which is a bummer.
Yes, which is why we had to ask, and they would not consent to it, despite us both explaining why, and that's why a sit-down never happened. But yeah, there were definitely a lot of steps taken and a lot of, like, eye-opening messages and firsthand accounts and, like, my own experiences there.
In the future, I'd highly recommend you bring the recording equipment with you. You sit down and then you start, as you're about to begin, you take out the equipment and you say, I'm going to record this. I'm going to record this conversation to make sure that everything stays consistent and safe. And generally you'll get consent to record at that point.
Yeah,
your chances of getting consent go way, way up.
Yeah, that was definitely my mistake because it was still in the text message phase. I just didn't want to agree to go onto that church campus without knowing that I was going to be able to record the conversation. So that was, like, where we were coming from with that. But this has been a very, like, helpful conversation. It's just really, like, have you guys had experiences, like, in your own activism with, like, your specific churches that you've grown up in where you've wanted to be able to spread awareness to things in those specific churches or felt scared to because of personal safety reasons?
Do you have an internet browser in front of you right now?
Yes, I do.
Type in Mormon Abuse Hotline and you will see the subject of hundreds of hours of my last 2 months. And enjoy your evening with that Google search.
Yeah, I
the
will
answer
say
is
that in my own personal church, no, because I left it a long time ago, and, like, I feel completely free to talk shit none of them are going to do shit about it. But I do also, and again, this is not me saying this is what you should do, but I do also share folks' stories of abuse and sort of abuse in their churches, and not because of me at all in any way, but there are people facing criminal consequences, and their story is now being shared wider and further. I've been fortunate to not feel physically threatened because most people don't know exactly where I live, and also, again, it's not in my direct community because, like, my church just wasn't that, they're like, whatever, they just don't, they're not going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
I did want to say, because I'm not sure this will be in the show notes, if anybody wants to email me about anything we've talked about or about coming on or about doing whatever, my email is queenoftheheathens1@gmail.com. And that can be either sort of, we can keep it between ourselves, or it could be something more public, but that's the best way to get a hold of me to talk about literally anything. So,
I see that you, like me, never adopt a short email address to make it at all easy for people. Yeah.
Well,
Dear Mr. Atheist, and don't misspell atheist, by the way.
Don't do it. Well, my name Jessica is JESSECA. So someone in Texas that's JESSICA is getting all of my fucking emails from that account.
Yeah, she hates you.
So. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Cassie.
And then, Jimmy, could you say that search again for the browser?
Just Mormon Abuse Hotline. If you want to spend the night with some fucked up shit in the same realm of where you are right now. Basically, the short version of the story is...
I grew up going... Yeah, I went to this church from the...
Cassie, did we lose you? Cassie is muted. I think Cassie's phone may have died, or the web browser.
Oh no, Cassie.
Called it on the web. I was just going to say, the short version of the story for the Mormon Abuse Hotline is that it became common knowledge that there is an abuse hotline in the Mormon Church for reporting when somebody has reported that a Mormon leader or another member of the church has sexually abused them, which just sounds excellent, except for that instead of it going to the police, it went to a law firm to evaluate the church's liability and tell the bishops whether they can or cannot alert the authorities, and in many cases told the bishops to not alert the authorities. So it was one of those things. Am I back? Yeah, you're back, Cassie.
Yes.
Yay.
Huzzah.
I grew up in that church from age 6 to 18. Every Sunday and Wednesday, I did Awana. Like, they wanted me to do Bible competitions and things like that because I have an insane, memorization capacity. And when I hit high school, things were not great, and they were not very supportive and didn't know how to handle certain situations. The pastor actually set up a homosexual hotline at one point. That was his personal phone number. He was like, the church has mistreated the LGBTQ community. And I'd love to be able to hear your stories. And you know how you can do the anonymous text list through Google? We had one of those, and we thought it was going to be like that. And he goes, but yeah, I'd love to go out to coffee with you. And this is my personal phone number. But he didn't say it was his personal phone number until the end. So I can guarantee you kids outed themselves to our youth pastor.
Horrible.
With the leaders were fucking pissed about the whole thing. And it was just terrible. The entire thing is terrible because churches are terrible.
Yeah.
Because that's just how that works. And now I'm they should be held accountable. But you guys have been very helpful. And and your content, Jimmy, has also just been a big help, generally in my own journey with skepticism and viewing systemic issues in the church, and
I appreciate that.
Being able to recognize a lot of red flags.
I'm glad you said so.
I didn't notice.
I'll make content for at least another week and not abandon everything to be a woodworker for at least one more week because you said so. But
at least one more week.
At least one more week. We'll see how next week's show goes, though.
Yeah. Also, to make sure that you like also just because I know you get emotional. I'm Rainy Bo Sprinkle from Twitch. So I'm the one who watches your content with my partner.
That's awesome.
So I just would like,
That's
I
all
just
I've
wanted
ever
to
wanted.
put that out there.
Community, the concept of communities of people watching my content together is always just very like, what an exciting thing as Jess rolls her eyes at me saving the world with my brilliance.
Yeah. He's like,
and my
yes,
handsomeness.
That's all I've ever wanted.
I'm just like, here I am with zero self-esteem and I'm building up to a 1%. And Jess is like, let me just tear that right back down for you. Let me just go ahead and pull that right back out.
Down.
Really, thank you for co-hosting tonight, Jess. Anyway, Cassie, thank you for calling.
Oh, I thought I was hosting.
You're picking fights in the you co-hosted. You're picking fights in the live chat.
I will definitely be in contact going forward. And thank you so much for this conversation. Yeah. And it's really helpful for me to not feel as lost trying to maneuver this.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to hear more of your story, and let me know if you how you burn everything down to the ground.
Absolutely. I hope you guys have a great night.
See you, Cassie.
All right.
Bye.
Burn it down. Burn it all down.
I will.
There's somebody in the I think it is funny. So for the record, all the people who are, I don't actually need 1,000 compliments. I do have terribly low self-esteem, but I also have difficulty accepting compliments from strangers because I'm like, you don't know how bad I suck off air. By the way, I was going to say, I do also want to set up a gay hotline myself, but it's different. When she said homosexual hotline, I was like, sounds like my kind of technology, and I am a tech god. It's funny. I have reasons why I have a hard time taking compliments from strangers, but I also have a hard time taking compliments from people I actually know. Just ask any of my friends, not Jess, but anybody who gives me compliments. Any of my friends who give me compliments. To the person who asked in the chat, who are worse, Mormons or Jehovah's Witness? Mormonisms or Jehovah's Witness? Jehovah's Witness. And actually, there's a really good series that we did on, I think we did it on both of our channels, but if you just look like Jimmy Snow Telltale Bite Model, we broke down Mormonism, but I know we discussed several times like the differences, comparing the two and which one's worse. Jehovah's Witnesses are worse. They're both terrible, but Jehovah's Witnesses are just a little bit worse. Like they're a little bit more isolationist. They're a little bit more sensationalist. They're even heavier control of, I was allowed to play video games growing up because my parents loved anything that would get me to shut the fuck up and not talk to them, right? They love that shit. Jess loves that kind of stuff too. She's always sending me video games so I'd shut up.
Totally.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
All the time. It's like our thing.
Someone just called me Owen.
You are not Owen. No.
Jimmy and Owen.
Owen is Telltale.
Oh, I was like, that's not how you spelled that.
Yeah. So that's a really good series that if people want to sort of get the specifics there. The specifics.
Mormons are Randy.
Mormons are Randy? What is Randy?
Sorry, y'all are killing me in the chat. Suck off air, lucky air. Goodbye.
Yeah, Richard Holloway, by the way, I saw one of your previous comments about co-hosts. You know what you did. That's all. I'm going to leave it at you. You know what you did, Richard. Well, that's it for tonight. I thought about at the beginning telling everybody just how sick I was for this episode.
Oh yeah, it almost didn't happen.
It almost didn't happen because I feel like absolute garbage. But I think I fooled everybody, even though if you actually go back, you'll realize I didn't share a single cognitive thought the entire. See, I didn't even want to say cognitive. I wanted to say cognizant. What was the word I couldn't say earlier? Obfuscate? That was the type of sick I am. I'm so nauseous that I can't do complex tongue things.
I need everyone to hear this right now, since Jimmy says, like, I never compliment him. Like,
please don't.
I thought you did an excellent job of making points and being coherent and intelligent and also shutting down callers.
Thank you. Thank you. With all of that, sort of addressing what a wonderful intellectual I am, how smart I am, and what a great communicator I am. I guess I want to end with this. Make sure you check out Heathen Queen on YouTube and the links. And let me end at the height of my intellectualism and just say, Matt Walsh eats poop.
Eats poop.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.